The metal floor was cold against Jake Morrison's face. His hands were bound behind his back with energy restraints that burned whenever he moved. Blood had dried on his uniform from the wound in his shoulder. 3 days ago, he had been fighting alongside his squad on the surface of Kepler 442. Now, he was a prisoner on an alien warship. Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside his cell. Jake didn't bother to look up. He had learned quickly that the Velcrin enjoyed seeing fear in their prisoners. He wouldn't give them the satisfaction. The door hissed open. 2 Velcrin guards entered first, their scaled skin reflecting the harsh blue lights. They stood at attention on either side of the doorway. Then, she walked in. She was young for a Velcrin officer, Jake could tell. Her scales were still bright purple, not yet faded to the darker colors of the older warriors. She wore the uniform of a lieutenant, and her eyes gleamed with something Jake recognized instantly: arrogance. "So this is the famous human resistance," she said in perfect English. Her voice dripped with mockery. "I expected something more impressive." Jake said nothing. He kept his eyes on the wall ahead. The lieutenant circled him slowly, like a predator examining wounded prey. "My name is Sira. I am the daughter of High Commander Lissa, the greatest military leader the Velcrin Empire has ever known, and you are my prisoner." Still, Jake remained silent. Sira's tail lashed with irritation. "You humans think you're so brave, so noble, but look at you now. Captured, broken. Your squad is scattered, probably dead. Your ship is destroyed, and yet you stay quiet like a stubborn child." Jake's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. "I've studied your species," Sira continued. She walked to stand directly in front of him, forcing him to look up at her towering form. The Velcrin were naturally taller than humans, and she used every inch of that height. "You're weak, soft-skinned. You need special suits just to survive in different environments. Your bones break so easily. You tire quickly. You're practically children playing at war." One of the guards chuckled at that. Jake's eyes flickered to the sound. Then, back to the wall. Sira crouched down to his level. "I'm going to ask you questions, human, and you will answer them. Where are your fleet's supply lines? How many ships does your species have in this sector? What are your defensive coordinates?" Jake met her eyes for the first time. "Morrison, Jake, Sergeant. Service number 2, 784692. Sira's pupils narrowed. "That's all you have to say? Name and number?" She stood abruptly. "How predictable. Your military training is as primitive as everything else about your kind." She walked to the door, then paused. "You know what amuses me most about humans? You actually believe you can win this war. The Velcrin Empire has conquered 47 star systems. We've brought down civilizations that had weapons you haven't even dreamed of yet." Jake's voice was quiet but steady. "We'll find out," Sira laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. "Will we? Look around you, Sergeant. You're in our ship. Your people are losing ground every day. In 6 months, Earth will be just another conquered world. And humans will be nothing but a footnote in Velcrin history." "Maybe," Jake said. "Or maybe you don't know humans as well as you think." The lieutenant's amusement faded. She stepped closer again, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "I know enough. I know that you bleed red, that you feel pain just like any other creature. I know that you break when enough pressure is applied." She gestured to the guards. "Increase his interrogation schedule. No food for 3 days. And lower the temperature in his cell. Let's see how well these fragile humans handle a little discomfort." The guards nodded. One of them activated a control panel on the wall. Jake felt the air grow colder immediately. Sira turned to leave, then stopped at the doorway. "Oh, and Sergeant? You should know that my mother is returning to this station tomorrow. High Commander Lissa herself. She's been overseeing the campaign against your colonies, and she's coming here to inspect our prisoners. When she arrives, I'm going to present you to her as an example of how pathetic the human resistance really is. She smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. I can't wait to see her face when she sees what we've captured. A broken, defeated human soldier who couldn't even protect his own squad. She'll probably have you executed as a show of strength. The Velkrin don't waste resources on worthless prisoners. Jake's expression didn't change. Your mother might surprise you. Syrah's eyes flashed with anger. What did you say? Nothing, ma'am. No. You said something about my mother. Explain yourself, human. Jake shook his head slightly. Just that. Sometimes, people aren't what we expect them to be. That's all. Sarah stared at him for a long moment. There was something in his tone that bothered her, though she couldn't identify what. It wasn't fear or defiance. It was something else. Something almost like recognition. You're trying to get in my head, she said finally. It won't work. Tomorrow, when my mother arrives, you'll see real power, real authority, and you'll understand just how foolish your resistance has been. She left the cell, the door hissing shut behind her. The guards followed, leaving Jake alone in the growing cold. He closed his eyes and allowed himself one small breath of relief. Lissa. After all these years, he had thought about her sometimes, wondered if she had made it home safely, wondered if she remembered that day on the colony world when everything went wrong. He had never expected to see her again. Certainly not like this. Jake shifted his weight, trying to ease the pain in his shoulder. Tomorrow was going to be very interesting. Syrah had no idea what kind of reunion she was about to witness. Neither did the Velkrin guards or the crew of this ship, but Jake knew. And despite everything, despite the pain and the cold and the uncertain future, he almost smiled. The High Commander was coming, and nothing was going to go the way Syrah expected. The command deck of the Velkrin warship was buzzing with activity. Syrah stood at attention near the main view screen, her uniform freshly pressed for her mother's arrival. Around her, junior officers hurried to complete last-minute preparations. Everything had to be perfect. Transport ship approaching, the communications officer announced. High Commander Lissa will dock in 5 minutes. Syrah felt her heart race with pride and nervousness. She hadn't seen her mother in 8 months. The war had kept them apart, with Lissa commanding fleets across 3 different sectors. Now she was finally here, and Syrah wanted to impress her. The human prisoner would be her gift. Evidence that Syrah was becoming a capable officer in her own right. The docking clamps engaged with a heavy thud that echoed through the ship. Syrah watched the airlock door, waiting. When it finally opened, High Commander Lissa stepped through, and every officer on the deck saluted as one. Lissa was impressive even by Velkrin standards. Her scales had darkened to deep purple with age, marked with scars from countless battles. She wore the full regalia of her rank, and her presence filled the room with authority. But there was something else in her bearing today. Something Syrah couldn't quite identify. Tension, perhaps, or worry. At ease, Lissa commanded. Her voice was deep and carried easily across the deck. Status report. The captain stepped forward and began listing their recent victories and current operations. Syrah waited patiently for her turn to speak. Finally, her mother's eyes found her. Lieutenant Syrah. I'm told you have a prisoner I should see. Yes, Commander, Syrah said, snapping back to attention. A human sergeant. We captured him during the raid on Kepler. 4-4-2. He's been resistant to interrogation. But I thought you might want to question him personally. Something flickered across Lissa's face. A sergeant? What's his name? Morrison, ma'am. Jake Morrison. That's all he'll tell us. Lissa went very still. The bridge crew continued their work, but Syrah noticed her mother's clawed hand tighten on her command staff. Take me to him, Lissa said quietly. Now. Syrah blinked at the urgency in her mother's voice. Of course, ma'am. This way. They walked through the corridors in silence. Sarah tried to make conversation, to tell her mother about the prisoner's defiance and her interrogation techniques. But Lissa barely seemed to hear her. The High Commander's mind was clearly elsewhere. When they reached the detention level, the guards straightened immediately. Sarah keyed in the access code to Jake's cell, eager to show her mother how she had broken the human spirit. The door opened. Lissa stepped inside first, and Sarah followed. Jake was sitting against the far wall now, his hands still bound. He looked worse than he had the day before. The cold had taken its toll, and his lips had a blue tinge. But when he saw who entered, his eyes widened. Lissa stopped dead in the doorway. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Sarah looked between her mother and the prisoner, confused by the tension in the air. Then Lissa whispered one word in English, so softly that Sarah almost didn't hear it. "Jake?" The human's face transformed. Despite his injuries, despite everything, he smiled. "Hello, Lissa. It's been a while." Sarah's confusion turned to shock. "Mother? You know this human?" But Lissa wasn't listening to her. She walked slowly across the cell, her eyes never leaving Jake's face. She stopped a few feet away from him, and Sarah saw something she had never seen before. Her mother's hands were shaking. "How?" Lissa asked. "How are you here?" Jake's smile faded slightly. "Wrong place, wrong time. My squad was covering an evacuation. Didn't quite make it to the transport before your ships arrived." "Your squad," Lissa repeated. "Are they?" "Some made it out. Some didn't." Jake's voice was neutral, but Sarah could hear the pain underneath. "That's war." Lissa closed her eyes briefly, then opened them again. She turned to Sarah, and her daughter had never seen such an expression on her mother's face before. "Release him," Lissa ordered. Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. "What?" "Mother, he's a prisoner. He's the enemy. Release him. Now." "But that is an order, Lieutenant." Sarah fumbled with the control device, deactivating Jake's restraints. The energy cuffs disappeared, and he slowly brought his hands forward, rubbing his wrists. Lissa immediately knelt beside him, examining his shoulder wound. "This needs proper medical attention," she said. Then she called to the guards outside. "Get a medical team down here immediately." "Mother, what is happening?" Sarah demanded. "How do you know this human?" Lissa looked up at her daughter. There were decades of memory in her eyes. "Sit down, Sarah. I need to tell you a story." "Lissa." Sarah sat, her mind reeling. Jake remained quiet, watching the exchange with careful attention. 9 years ago, Lissa began, I was part of a diplomatic mission to a neutral colony world. The mission was supposed to establish trade routes and peaceful relations. But there was an attack. Pirates, we thought at first. Later we learned they were mercenaries hired by those who didn't want peace between our peoples. She paused, her voice growing softer. My entire team was trapped. Our ship was destroyed. We were cut off from any help, surrounded by enemies who wanted us dead. We thought we would die there. Sarah glanced at Jake. He was listening to the story like he had lived it. Because, she realized with growing horror, he had. Then the humans came, Lissa continued. A marine unit that happened to be in the system. They weren't part of any official rescue. They just heard a distress signal and responded. Jake was the sergeant leading the ground team. We didn't know if we could trust them, Lissa said. The Velcrin and humans had only just made contact. We barely understood each other. But Jake and his unit fought through the mercenaries. They protected us. They got us to safety. Ram. 2. Wam. She looked directly at Jake now. And when the mercenaries counterattacked during our escape, Jake stayed behind. He and 2 of his men held them off while the rest of his unit got us to the evacuation point. I begged him to come with us. He refused. He said it was his job to make sure everyone else got out first. Sarah felt her stomach drop. What happened to him? We thought he died, Lissa said quietly. His unit told us he was killed holding that position. For 9 years, I believed that. I've carried that debt with me every day since. She reached out and gently touched Jake's arm. But you lived. Jake nodded. My men got me out. Barely. Spent 3 months in a hospital. But yeah, I lived. Why didn't you try to contact me? By the time I recovered, the tensions between our peoples had gotten worse. Figured a human reaching out to a Velcrin commander wouldn't help matters. He smiled sadly. Guess I was right about that. Lissa stood slowly, her expression hardening into something Sira recognized. Determination. Authority. But also something else. Shame. Sira, she said, her voice carrying the full weight of her rank. What have you done to this man? The question hung in the cold air like a blade. Sira felt her throat go dry. Her mother's question echoed in the small cell, and suddenly all of her actions over the past 3 days seemed to replay in her mind. The mockery, the threats, the cold, the denied food. I was following standard interrogation procedures, Sarah said, but her voice wavered. He's a prisoner of war. I was trying to gather intelligence. Lissa's eyes narrowed. Show me his medical file. Now. Sarah pulled up the data on her portable device, her hands trembling slightly. Lissa took it and read in silence. With each line, her expression grew darker. Denied medical treatment for a gunshot wound, Lissa read aloud. Temperature reduced to near freezing levels. No food for 72 hours. Subjected to stress positions. She looked up at her daughter. Is this what we've become? Is this how the Velcrin Empire treats those who once saved our lives? I didn't know, Sira protested. How could I have known he saved you? He's just another human soldier. Just another human soldier, Lissa repeated. Her voice was dangerously quiet now. Sarah, this man risked his life for me. For Ambassador Krell. For Senior Commander Vex. For 14 members of the Velcrin Diplomatic Corps who are now sitting on the High Council. Do you understand what that means? Sarah felt her world tilting. Who tried to stop this war? Yes. Lissa handed the device back to her daughter. The Council voted against attacking humanity. They were outvoted by the military faction, the same faction that wants to crush Earth before humans become too strong to defeat. She turned to Jake, who was watching the exchange with careful attention. They were afraid of you. Not just your weapons or your ships. They were afraid of what you represent. And what's that? Jake asked quietly. Honor. Sacrifice. The idea that a soldier would stay behind to save strangers, even if it meant his own death. Lissa's voice carried a weight that made Sira feel small. When you saved us, Jake, you changed how some of us see your species. But others saw it as weakness. They convinced themselves that humans were soft, that your mercy made you vulnerable. They were wrong, Jake said simply. I know that, Lissa replied. I've watched your species fight for 3 years. I've seen human ships make impossible stands. I've seen human soldiers refuse to surrender when they could have walked away. You don't fight like people who are weak. You fight like people who understand exactly what they're fighting for. Sira found her voice again. Mother, even if what you say is true, he's still the enemy. We're at war. My duty is to the Empire. Lissa turned to face her daughter fully. And my duty is to honor. Do you know what that word means, Sarah? Really means? Of course I do. It means loyalty to the Empire. To our people. No. Lissa's voice cut through Sarah's words like a blade. Honor means recognizing a debt that must be paid. It means understanding that some things transcend politics and war. Jake Morrison saved my life. Under Velcrin law, I owe him a life debt. That debt doesn't disappear because our governments decided to fight. She walked to the center of the cell, standing between her daughter and the human. The old laws are clear about this. When a life is saved, a debt is created. That debt must be honored above all else, even above orders from superiors, even above loyalty to the throne itself. Those are ancient traditions, Sira argued. Nobody follows them anymore. I do. Lisa's voice was iron. And so should you. I raised you to understand our history, our culture. Or did you forget everything I taught you the moment you put on that uniform? Sira felt tears burning in her eyes, but she blinked them back. What are you asking me to do? Let him go? That's treason. I'm not asking you anything, Lisa said. I'm telling you what I'm going to do. And then, you'll have to decide what kind of officer you want to be. What kind of Velkrin you want to be. She turned back to Jake. The medical team had arrived and was carefully treating his shoulder wound. He winced as they cleaned it, but made no sound of complaint. When they finished, he nodded his thanks. Lissa waited until they left. Then she did something that made Sira's heart stop. She knelt. The High Commander of the Velkrin fleet, the most decorated military leader in the Empire, the warrior who had conquered star systems and commanded thousands of ships, lowered herself to one knee before a human prisoner. No, Sira whispered. Mother, don't. But Lissa wasn't listening. Her eyes were fixed on Jake's face. Jake Morrison, she said formally, her voice carrying the weight of ritual. 9 years ago, you saved my life and the lives of my team. You asked for nothing in return. You expected nothing. But under the old laws of my people, a debt was created that day. A debt that I carry with me still. Jake looked uncomfortable. Lissa, you don't have to. I offer you my service. Lissa continued, as if he hadn't spoken. My life for yours, until the debt is paid. I swear this by my ancestors and by my honor. This debt stands above all others, above my rank, above my duty to the Empire, above everything. The cell was silent except for the hum of the ship's engines. Sira stood frozen, unable to process what she was seeing. Her mother, kneeling before their enemy, offering service like a common soldier. Get up, Jake said finally. Please. You don't owe me anything. I owe you everything. Lisa replied. And I will not stand until you acknowledge this debt. Jake looked at Sarah. She saw something in his eyes then. Not triumph, not satisfaction, just sadness. Like he understood exactly how much this was costing both of them. Sira, he said gently, your mother is one of the bravest people I've ever met. What she's doing right now. This takes more courage than anything I did on that colony world. Sira wanted to scream. She wanted to drag her mother up, to tell her she was being foolish, to remind her of who she was. But she couldn't move. She could only watch as everything she thought she understood about honor and duty and war crumbled around her. If I accept this, Jake said slowly, addressing Lissa, what happens then? Then I am bound to you until the debt is satisfied. I will serve your interests, protect you, fight for you if necessary. Lisa's voice was steady. Even if it means standing against my own people. That's insane. Sira finally burst out. Mother, this is insane. You can't throw away everything you've built for one human. Lissa looked at her daughter. This human gave me my life. He gave you your mother. Without him, I would have died on that colony world, and you would have grown up an orphan. Is that worth nothing to you? The question hit Sira like a physical blow. She had never thought about it that way. Never considered that, without Jake's actions, her entire life would have been different. That she might have grown up alone, without her mother's guidance and love. She looked at Jake again. Really looked at him this time. Not as an enemy. Not as a prisoner. But as the person who had changed everything. Jake slowly got to his feet. His shoulder freshly bandaged. He looked down at Lissa, still kneeling before him. and something in his expression softened. "I need to ask you something first," he said. "My squad. The ones who were captured with me. Where are they?" Sarah felt her stomach twist. This was the part she had been dreading. She had hoped it wouldn't come up. Not with her mother present. But there was no avoiding it now. "Lieutenant?" Lissa's voice was sharp. "Answer him. They were sent to labor camps," Sarah said quietly. "Standard procedure for prisoners who refuse to cooperate." "Which camps?" Jake's voice was still calm, but there was steel underneath. "And what happened to them there?" Sarah couldn't meet his eyes. "3 of them are still alive. The others, they didn't survive the interrogations. We needed information about human defenses. They wouldn't give it to us." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Jake's jaw clenched, and for the first time since Lissa had entered, Sarah saw real anger in his face. "You tortured them," he said flatly. "We questioned them using approved methods," Sarah replied, but the words sounded weak even to her own ears. "You tortured them," Jake repeated. "People under my command. People I was responsible for keeping safe." Lisa rose from her kneeling position in one swift movement. She turned to her daughter, and Sarah had never seen such fury in her mother's eyes. "Tell me you didn't authorize torture," Lisa said, her voice deadly quiet. Sarah's silence was answer enough. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Lisa's voice was shaking now. "Not just to these humans, but to our house, to our honor, to everything our family stands for. I was following military protocol." Sarah shot back. "Every officer in this fleet has done the same thing. We're at war. We need intelligence." "At what cost?" Lissa demanded. "The Velkrin have rules about prisoners." Sarah. "Ancient rules that exist for a reason. We don't torture captives because we're supposed to be better than that. We're supposed to be honorable warriors, not common thugs." "The High Council suspended those rules when the war started," Sarah argued. "They said human prisoners weren't covered under traditional protections because the military faction wanted an excuse to be cruel," Lissa interrupted. "And you went along with it. You didn't question it. You didn't think about what it meant. You just followed orders." She walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars beyond. "Do you know why the Council really voted against this war? Not just because of what Jake did, although that was part of it. It was because we knew that fighting humans would change us, would make us into something we weren't supposed to be." She turned back to face them both. "Humans don't fight clean. They fight desperately. They fight with everything they have. And if we match them cruelty for cruelty, if we abandon our principles to win, then what have we won? What does victory even mean if we've lost ourselves in the process?" "You're talking like we've already lost," Sarah said bitterly. "In some ways, we have," Lissa replied. "The Velkrin Empire I served when I was your age wouldn't have allowed what you did. We had honor. We had standards. Now we have excuses." Jake finally spoke. "Where are the survivors?" "My 3 soldiers who are still alive." Sarah checked her device. 2 are on this ship, in the detention level. The 3rd is on a prison transport, heading to the core worlds. "I want to see them," Jake said. It wasn't a request. Lissa nodded. "We'll arrange it. But first, we need to talk about what happens next." She looked at her daughter. "Because this situation is about to become very complicated." "It's already complicated," Sarah muttered. "It's about to get worse," Lissa said. "Jake, I meant what I said about the life debt. I'm bound to help you. But I need you to understand the position this puts me in. If I openly defy the Empire to protect you, they'll label me a traitor. They'll send ships to hunt us down. People will die." "I'm not asking you to betray your people," Jake said. "I know. But that's what it will look like." Lisa paced the small cell. "The military faction has been looking for an excuse to remove me from command. I've been too vocal about my concerns with how the war is being fought. If they learn about you, about our history, They'll use it against me. Then don't tell them, Sarah said suddenly. Both adults looked at her in surprise. Don't tell the Empire about any of this. We can say the prisoner escaped. That he overpowered the guards and stole a shuttle. That's still treason, Lissa pointed out. Maybe, Sarah admitted. But it's treason that keeps you alive and in command. And it keeps Mother. If you're removed from your position, who replaces you? Someone. From the military faction. Someone who'll be even more ruthless than I was. She looked at Jake. I'm not saying this because I suddenly love humans. I'm saying it because I'm starting to understand that this war is more complicated than I thought. And if my mother believes we need to find another way, then maybe she's right. Lissa studied her daughter carefully. You've changed your mind. Quickly. Not about everything, Sarah said. I still think humans are our enemies. I still think they're dangerous. But, she struggled to find the words. I also think I didn't understand what honor really meant. Not until I saw you kneel. She turned to Jake. I was wrong about you. I called you weak and primitive. I mocked your species. But weak people don't sacrifice themselves for strangers. Primitive people don't risk everything for honor. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. Jake looked at her for a long moment. Apology noted. But your actions got 3 of my people killed. That's not something. Sorry. Fixes. I know, Sarah said quietly. But it's all I have to offer right now. The cell door suddenly hissed open. A Velcrin officer stood there, looking nervous. High Commander. The captain needs you on the bridge immediately. We've received an urgent transmission from the High Council. Lissa's expression hardened. About what? They didn't say, ma'am, but it's marked highest priority. Lissa exchanged a glance with Jake. We'll continue this conversation later. Sarah, you're with me. Jake, stay here for now. I'll send guards to take you to see your surviving squad members. As they left, Jake called after them. She paused at the door. Don't thank me yet. We're all walking on very thin ice right now. One wrong move, and everything falls apart. The door closed behind them. Jake was alone again. But this time, it felt different. He had allies now. Unexpected, as they were. The High Commander of the enemy fleet and her daughter, both struggling with what honor meant in the middle of a war neither of them had wanted. He sat back down, wincing at the pain in his shoulder. 3 of his people were still alive. That was something. And Lissa was still the same person who had fought beside him years ago, even if she wore an enemy uniform now. The war wasn't over. Not by a long shot. But maybe, just maybe, there was a path through it that didn't end with everyone dead. Jake closed his eyes and waited for the guards to take him to his surviving squad members. He needed to see them with his own eyes. Needed to know they were really alive. And then, together, they would figure out what came next. The bridge was filled with tension when Lissa and Sarah arrived. Officers stood at their stations. But their attention was focused on the main view screen. A face filled it, scaled and ancient, belonging to Council Elder Vex. High Commander, Vex said, his voice formal. We need to discuss a sensitive matter. Clear the bridge of all personnel, except essential command staff. Lisa gave the order. Junior officers filed out quickly, leaving only herself, Sarah, the captain, and a few senior crew members. When the door sealed, Vex continued. We've received intelligence that changes everything, he said. The military faction is planning a final strike against Earth. They intend to deploy weapons that will make the planet uninhabitable. They're calling it Operation Final Dawn. Sarah felt her blood run cold. That's genocide. Yes, Vex agreed. And it's exactly what some of us feared would happen. The military faction believes that if humans are eliminated completely, the war ends, and the Empire can expand without resistance. Lissa's claws dug into her command chair. When? 3 weeks, They're assembling the fleet now. And, Lissa, they've requested your presence. They want you to lead the attack. No, Lissa said immediately. They expected you to refuse. Which is why they've sent an alternative. If you won't lead the attack, they'll remove you from command and court-martial you for insubordination. They have enough votes in the council to make it happen. Sira watched her mother's face. For the first time in her life, she saw Lissa look uncertain. There's something else, Vex continued. I'm not supposed to tell you this, but you deserve to know. Several of us on the council have been working on a peace initiative, secret negotiations with human leadership. We were making progress. But Operation Final Dawn will destroy everything we've built. Can you stop it? Lissa asked. Not from here. The military faction controls the fleet. But if someone could provide evidence of their real intentions, evidence that shows they're acting against the Empire's long-term interests, we might be able to sway enough council members to vote them down. Lissa was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, what kind of evidence? Testimony from someone who has seen both sides. Someone who can speak to what this war is really about. Vex's eyes seemed to bore through the screen. Someone like the human sergeant you have in your detention cells. Sarah's eyes went wide. How do you know about him? Lone. Anapown. Sine. Sine. I make it my business to know things, Vex replied. And I know exactly who Jake Morrison is. He saved my life 9 years ago. Along with yours, Lissa. I've never forgotten that debt. You want me to bring a human prisoner before the council? Lissa asked. They'll never allow it. They will if you invoke the old laws, Vex said. The life debt protocols. If you formally declare that you owe this human your service, then you have the right to request he be heard. The military faction will hate it, but they can't legally refuse without violating traditions that go back thousands of years. And if Jake testifies? Lissa asked. What exactly would you want him to say? Lissa, and if the truth. About how the war started. About the military faction's manipulation of events. About what humans are really like. Vex leaned closer to the screen. Lissa, the Empire has been fed lies about humanity. We've been told they're weak, that they're primitive, that they're barely worthy of notice. But those of us who have met them know better. We know they're dangerous, yes, but not in the way the military faction claims. He paused. They're dangerous because they won't stay down, because they fight for each other, because they have something we've lost along the way. Purpose. Unity. A reason to fight beyond simple conquest. Sarah found herself thinking about Jake. About his quiet defiance in the face of her mockery. About how he had stayed behind to save strangers. About how he had endured torture without breaking. I'll do it, Lissa said suddenly. I'll invoke the life debt. I'll bring Jake before the council. Mother. That's suicide, Sira protested. The military faction will destroy you. Maybe, Lissa agreed. But if I don't try, Earth dies. Billions of humans die. And we become exactly what they think we are. Monsters. God. 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 Vex nodded approvingly. I'll make the arrangements. You have 1 week to reach the homeworld. And, Lissa, bring your daughter with you. She'll need to testify too. Me? Sira's voice cracked. What could I possibly say? Crew. And Destinings. You can tell them what you did to human prisoners, Vex said bluntly. You can tell them how easy it was to follow orders without questioning them. You can show them what this war is turning us into. The screen went dark. Sira stood frozen, processing what had just happened. In 1 week, she would be standing before the highest authority in the Velcrin Empire, admitting to torture, admitting to war crimes. Her career would be over. She might even be executed. I can't do this, she whispered. Lissa placed a hand on her shoulder. Yes, you can. Because it's the right thing to do. And because if we don't, millions of people die. But I'll be ruined. Everything I've worked for will mean nothing if we lose who we are. Lissa finished. Sarah, I know this is hard. But sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that matter most. They went to the detention level together. Jake was already there, standing with two other humans. All three looked thin and battered, but alive. When Jake saw Lissa and Sarah approach, he straightened. We need to talk, Lissa said. All of you. About what happens next. She explained the situation. The planned genocide. The peace initiative. The request for testimony. Jake listened, without interrupting, his face growing darker with each detail. So you want me to go before your government and convince them not to kill my entire species, he said when she finished. No pressure. I know it's asking a lot, Lissa said. It's asking everything, Jake corrected. If I go with you and this doesn't work, I'm dead. My people are dead. Earth is dead. And if you don't go, the same thing happens, Lissa pointed out. At least this way, you have a chance. Jake looked at his surviving squad members. They nodded. One of them, a young woman named Lisa, spoke up. If there's any chance to stop this, we have to take it. Even if it means trusting the enemy? Jake asked. The enemy is trying to stop a genocide, Lisa said. That makes them allies, at least for now. Jake turned back to Lissa. All right, I'll do it. We'll all do it. But I have conditions. Name them. First, my people get proper medical care and food. No more torture. No more interrogation. They're treated like prisoners of war should be treated. Agreed, Lissa said immediately. Second, if this goes wrong, if your council decides to proceed with the attack anyway, you get us off your homeworld and back to human space. We deserve the chance to warn our people. Lissa hesitated. That would be treason, no question about it. But she nodded. Agreed. And third, Jake said, looking at Sarah. She comes with us. She testifies about what she did. About what this war made her become. Not to punish her, but to show your people the real cost of what they're doing. Sarah met his eyes. She saw no cruelty there. No desire for revenge. Just a hard truth that needed to be faced. I'll do it, she said quietly. The journey to the Velcrin homeworld took 5 days. During that time, Jake recovered from his injuries. He spent hours talking with Lisa about what he would say to the council. Sarah listened to these conversations, learning more about humans than she ever had from military briefings. She learned that Earth had nearly destroyed itself in wars before finally uniting. She learned that humans carried that history with them, that it made them both fierce and careful. She learned that they didn't want this war any more than the peace faction did. On the final day before they reached the homeworld, Sarah found Jake standing alone in the observation deck, looking at the stars. I never apologized properly, she said, for what I did to your people, for the ones who died. Jake didn't look at her. No, you didn't. I'm sorry, Sarah said. I know that doesn't change anything. I know it doesn't bring them back. But I am sorry. I thought I was doing my duty. I thought I was being strong. I was wrong. You were following orders? Jake said. That's what soldiers do. But following orders doesn't make something right. You have to think about what those orders mean. What they cost. I understand that now, Sarah said. Too late, but I understand. Jake finally turned to face her. It's not too late to choose differently. That's what tomorrow is about. Choosing a different path. The next day, they stood before the Velcrin High Council. The chamber was enormous, filled with hundreds of council members. The military faction sat on one side, the peace faction on the other. In the center, neutral members waited to hear the evidence. Lissa spoke first, formally invoking the life debt. Then, Jake testified, speaking clearly about the war's origins, about human determination, about what genocide would really accomplish. Then it was Sira's turn. She walked to the center of the chamber, her legs shaking, and she told the truth. All of it. What she had done. Why she had done it. How it had felt to see her mother kneel before the human she had tortured. I thought strength meant being hard, she said. I thought honor meant never questioning orders. But I was wrong. Real strength is admitting when you've failed. Real honor is standing up, even when it costs you everything. The council deliberated for hours. Finally, they voted. The result was close, but clear. Operation Final Dawn was cancelled. The military faction leaders were removed from their positions. Peace negotiations would begin immediately. 6 months later, Jake stood on Earth, breathing air that had almost been poison. The war wasn't over, but it was ending. Treaties were being signed. Prisoners were being exchanged. Sira had been assigned as a liaison between the two peoples. It was strange work, building bridges instead of walls. But it felt right. She found Jake at the memorial for fallen soldiers. I heard they're promoting you, she said. Making you an ambassador. Yeah, Jake said. Weird how life works out. I keep thinking about what you said, Sira told him. About choosing differently. About it not being too late. And I think maybe that's what honor really is. Not just following rules, but knowing when to break them. Knowing when to stand up. Even if you stand alone, Jake smiled. You're learning. They stood together in silence, Human and Velcrin, looking at names carved in stone. Names of those who died before the lesson was learned. But also witnesses to a future being built differently. A future where maybe, just maybe, both species could be better than their worst moments.